10 a.m. Central Time, 11 a.m. Eastern Time. Thank you so much for joining our annual FAFSA line-by-line webinar. My name is Jason Seay with the Tennessee Higher Education Commission and the Tennessee Student Assistance Corporation. Again, so glad that you are here. You know, this morning, some of you have joined this webinar for years. For the first time, fingers crossed, we are actually going to utilize the FAFSA Demo site to actually do a quote, real, comma, fake FAFSA, as opposed to just going through a bunch of screenshots. So that is what we will begin with by doing the FAFSA Demo. So pretend you have open Google Chrome or open Microsoft Edge and type in FAFSA.gov, and you get to the FAFSA homepage, and you either click the Start Here or Log In button. Either button will land you at this page where you are to be able to log in. And as you see, the individual has two options. On the left, it says, I am a student. On the right, it says, I am a parent, preparer, or a student from a freely associated state. My encouragement, my recommendation is for the student to have created his or her login, his or her US username, password, better known as the FSC ID, prior to doing this. And that's what I would encourage all applicants to initially log in with, is that student's username and password. Because we're using the demo site, FAFSA has created again, a fake account, and username is new user 60, and the password I'm entering now. And when we enter it, we click next. There will be this disclaimer message, and the student will simply click accept to get past that screen. And at this point in time, it looks like, perhaps it was me earlier, I already started the 2021 FAFSA. In this case, what I'm going to do is I'm going to click the Start Over button just to be able to start this application from scratch. That being said, if you are working with a high school senior, or if you are a college student, obviously, today and at this point in time in the fall, this is the time to do that 2021 FAFSA that opened up on October 1. Once they click the 2021 FAFSA, and if I will, I'll just go back to my FAFSA screen. So once they see the Start 2021 FAFSA, that is what they click. This will take the student to the Save key. I always tell students and parents when I'm doing a FAFSA workshop, do not overthink this screen. Just type in a 4-digit number that you can remember. The idea with the Save key is if the student/parent is unable to finish the FAFSA in one setting, he or she will be prompted for the Save key upon re-entering their FAFSA to pick up where they last left off at. So, for example, I'm just going to type the Save key 1, 2, 3, 4. That is what I choose in this case. Working at high schools this week, other popular 4-digit numbers have been 2019 and 2020, right? I mean, just something easy for the student to remember. Once you enter the Save key and you click Next, the student, and hopefully this will process, this is the only fear of doing something like this, right? You get to this introduction screen. Obviously, the parent-student wants to kind of read through what they're going to experience, more power to them. But that said, I would just say click Next to get to the next screen, which this is the initial screen of the FAFSA. And as you see, top left-hand corner, this is the student demographics section of the FAFSA. So on this first screen, by entering and by using that username and password, what you see is the student's social, first name, last name, and date of birth have all transferred over from what they used to create the FSC ID. If the student wants, he or she can enter their middle initial. I'll say this, that's not a make or break question in terms of they can choose to leave that blank or they can choose to enter a middle initial if they choose. That said, assuming everything on this screen is accurate, click Next, and that will then take you to the student email screen. And this example, yet again, the email address that was used to create the FSA ID will transfer over. Obviously, double check it, assuming it's right. Then next, answer the telephone question. And in this case, we're just going to type in that, which is my office number. Just again, this is a fake FAFSA, so nothing's gonna be saved here per se. But again, student, just type in the telephone number. On the next screen, this is the address. This is also pre-populated from that FSA ID. Those of you who may just joined, let me remind you, this is a FAFSA demo site, so I'm sure someone from Maryland probably created this username and password. So again, if it makes you feel better, we can change this. Let's say, since I'm sitting here in Nashville, Tennessee right now, we will update this to say Nashville, Tennessee, and we'll also update the zip code that you see. I'll leave the mailing address the same as of right now. So on the next screen, the student is asked, have you lived in Tennessee for at least 5 years? So if you're a lifelong Tennessean, the answer is yes. This is an important question from a HOPE scholarship perspective because, as many of you know, from a HOPE perspective, the student must be a resident of Tennessee for 1 year prior to the application deadline. So for example, a student entering college in August/September of 2020, he or she would have had to have moved to Tennessee by September of 2019. That said, if you are working with a student who just, say, recently moved or within, let's say, the last 5 years or even this year, and if they answer no to the question, the follow-up will be, well, is Tennessee your state of legal residence? It should be, so we'll keep Tennessee the same. Again, did you become a legal resident in Tennessee before January 1st, 2015? Let's say no, and in this case, this is one of those crucial, make sure the student and or parent enters the month and year that they moved to Tennessee. So for example, if I moved to Tennessee in August of 2019, I need to put that. If I leave this question blank, it will pre-populate to today's month and years, so 10/2019. What that means is, since it would say October 2019, technically I would now be ineligible for HOPE beginning next fall because I did not move here in September. So this is something that for years, and Kevin's with me, Kevin, for years in doing this webinar where usually we've had still screenshots, I've talked through this. Now you actually see this and how we're going through it right now. So again, folks, that is what a student would need to do who has moved here within the last 5 years. They need to make sure that they indicate the month and year and answer that specific question, when did you become a legal resident of Tennessee, and answer it correctly. Again, when did they move to Tennessee, all right? Next question, are you a citizen? So for our citizens, they will indicate yes. As a reminder, if a student is a green card holder or has an I-94 arrival departure record, he or she is considered an eligible non-citizen and would select the no, comma, but I am an eligible non-citizen. This is my advice. To me, only students who are citizens, green card holders, and have I-94 arrival departure records, those are the only students that need to complete the FAFSA. Students who are undocumented or DACA, my advice would for them not to complete this FAFSA, but follow up with the colleges that they are interested in terms of discussing with them more about financial aid that they may qualify for from the college itself. At the end of this, I'm going to give you a resource. Some of you have seen this resource again, but at the end, after we sit into the FAFSA and actually transition back to my PowerPoint slides, I am going to give everyone a resource for students who are undocumented or DACA. Again, in this case, I'm going to say, yes, I'm a citizen, and I am going to move on. On the next screen, all right, what will your high school completion status be when you begin college in 2021? My assumption, if you're a high school senior, is that you will have a high school diploma. So what college degree or certificate will you be working on when you begin the 2021 year? Another one of these important questions on the FAFSA being this: the student should select either first bachelor's degree, an associate's degree, either one, occupational technical program or the general ed transfer program, or if they are considering a Tennessee College of Applied Technology, obviously we would advise them to select either one of the certificate or diploma programs. Some of you may be going, now Jason, I see there's 2 associate degree options. I see there's 2 certificate diploma options. Folks, these are not necessarily make or break questions per se. I would have the student to select one of these, including also first bachelor's degrees. Here's why this is quote unquote a make or break question. The common mistake here is for some students to indicate that they are pursuing a professional degree, all right? And God bless them. Some students think, hey, I'm going to become a doctor, or I'm going to, become a lawyer and pursue my JD. And so they're thinking long-term, not short-term. And as some of you have heard me present, it's all about baby steps, folks. So in other words, students should be indicating first bachelor's, associate, or certificate diploma and move on. I will say this: if you're a student that, let's say you're thinking between all 3 of the options, certificate, associate, or first bachelor's degree, I would say, again, just choose one to get past this question. Generally speaking, working with colleges of all these types across the state, yet again, this is not necessarily a make or break question for them. It's only make or break if the student accidentally selects that professional degree as an option. So I'm going to pursue first bachelor's degree in this case and move on. Notice, because I indicated I'm pursuing my first bachelor's degree, the next question, will you have your first bachelor's degree before the 2021 school year? It automatically pre-populates to no. Next question, what is your college grade level? Again, potentially a make or break question. We need to make sure students avoid selecting the first year college grad or professional option. Generally speaking, if you are a high school counselor and you're working with high school seniors, they all need to select never attended first year. I did a FAFSA workshop at Middle College High School here in Nashville the other night, and working alongside Dr. Days there at Middle College. This was a question that all her students asked, because all of her students had already earned some college credit. And I said to all of them, regardless of the amount of credit you've earned, from a financial aid perspective, you should indicate that you have never attended college, and this will be your first year from a financial aid perspective. And so that's what, if you are a high school counselor, that's what you need to encourage your students to select there. Last question on the screen: is a student interested in work study? My default answer is always yes. They can always turn it down, but obviously this gives them that option if they want to work on campus, if they want to earn that additional paycheck to help with the cost of college, have them to answer yes, and that way at least that will put them on this college's radar. If they indicate no or don't know, most colleges will then ignore them from a work study perspective. So again, my default answer here is always yes. So on the next screen, are you male or female? So in this case, I'm going to indicate male because I want to show you the selective service question. So as a male in this country, if you are a citizen, or again, if you are an eligible non-citizen, per federal law, you have to register with selective service when you turn 18. So by indicating male, FAFSA now asks, are you registered with selective service? So let's say I'm a male, I'm 17 right now. I have not, so I'm going to select no. FAFSA then asks, do you want us to register you with selective service? The answer, absolutely yes. I want my male students to indicate yes, whether they're 16 or 17, because, again, folks, they have to be registered by Selective Service when they turn 18. If they have not, then their financial aid processing will be delayed until they do so. So by saying yes to this question, FAFSA will work to register the student with Selective Service, I believe, between 30 and 45 days prior to the 18th birthday. So again, if you're a male student, the answer is yes, or you're working with a male student, always answer this yes. Even if mama and daddy are sitting there and students like, well, I'm only 16, just go ahead and say yes, because again, more than likely they may forget to do this, all right? So again, answer yes and move on. All right, next screen, driver's license information. So this is actually an optional question on the FAFSA. In other words, we can click next to bypass it, which you're going to see that I'm going to do in just a second. On the other hand, there are some of our colleges that actually utilize the driver's license number to verify that a student is, in fact, a Tennessee resident. So if the student has a driver's license on them, or a state driver's permit, or even a state-issued ID, just FYI, this is my annual reminder that the number that is assigned to any of those three documents will always be that student's number as they progress through those documents. So, for example, if I was issued a state-issued ID, let's say when I was 13, that number that was on that state-issued ID when I get my driver's permit, it will be the same number. And then when I graduate to my driver's license, it will be that same number. So again, if the student has a state-issued ID, permit, or driver's license, enter the number now and select the state. But if they don't have one, or if they don't have it on them, again, they can bypass this question by simply clicking next, as you see me just do. Next screen, are you a foster youth, or were you at any time in the foster care system? Obviously, in this case, based on how the question is phrased, you know, if at any time since birth you were in foster care, you will answer this question yes. I'm going to say no and move on. The next two questions are related to the educational attainment by, specifically in this case, your biological parents. These are not mandatory questions, so we can click next to bypass them. A lot of counselors have asked me in the past, and parents and students as well, why are these two questions presented? And the answer is, in certain states, there are state agencies that, and colleges as well, that use the answers to these questions to determine eligibility for first-generation college scholarships. Folks, I'm not aware of anyone in Tennessee doing that, but again, these two questions specifically pertain to mom and dad. So, for example, my parents, they both earned high school diplomas, and that was it. So I'll just select the high school diploma or high school and move on. On the next screen of the FAFSA, this is where the student will enter what high school he or she is attending or has graduated from. Notice, you know, what I just did in this case. Let's say I'm a student at McGavock High School. All the student needs to do is type in McGavock, and I just then tab down and selected Tennessee as my state, and then I click search, and that then, you know, this now shows how FAFSA has McGavock High listed. You know, this is an issue for years that we've seen in I'm going to say in Nashville, and I say the issue of some of our high schools at least do or once did have the word comprehensive in them. And so sometimes what I learned early on when working with students is, you know, if I'm a McGavock, just type McGavock, search Tennessee, click search, and then select it from this list for FAFSA to pre-populate how the high schools should be presented. Now, on the next screen, this is where the students will begin entering what colleges they want to send their FAFSA to, all right? Pretty straightforward, I believe, but let's go over some things, all right? I would encourage a student to enter any college that they are considering. Notice I used the word that or phrase that they are considering. I'm not saying that they have to have applied by it today. But so, for example, if I'm considering Nashville State, Middle Tennessee, Vanderbilt, Western Kentucky University, then list those 4 colleges regardless if I've actually submitted my application to those 4 colleges. Go ahead and just enter them. That said, we do the FAFSA today, and let's say 6 weeks from now, a new college has emerged that I did not initially enter on the FAFSA. Guys, no harm, no foul. Student will simply return to FAFSA, log in, and at that point in time, add the school by, once they've logged in, going up here and clicking on that school selection tab that you see where my cursor is, or hopefully that you can see where my cursor is right now, and enter the information. Now, in terms of entering colleges or searching for colleges, obviously there's 2 methods. One method is if you know the federal school code, for example, 003510, that is Middle Tennessee State University. So once you enter that code and click search, Middle comes up, you check the box, that now adds Middle as one of the colleges in which your FAFSA will be sent to. The other way for searching for colleges is obviously, by utilizing the searching for state. And then, for example, let's say I'm interested in Nashville State. So again, less is more. Just search Nashville State, click search, and then yet again, here you see Nashville State Community College pops up. We'll check the box, and now Nashville State is added to the FAFSA. It's as simple as that, folks. Now, limitations. You can only list up to 10 colleges at a time, all right? I spoke at a high school the other night, Kevin, and you as a former teacher, you worked with students like this. I had a student that raised her hand and goes, Mr. Jason, I'm thinking about 16 colleges. And I was like, well, that's awesome. So here's what you do. On this first FAFSA, you list your 10 colleges. You and your mom and dad, y'all submit that FAFSA. Once it processes in 3 to 5 days, at that point in time, you will return the FAFSA, remove the 10, add the next 6, then submit that correction. That is how you would get your FAFSA to 16 schools, right, in that example. So,
the TCATs, the technical colleges, are also there, right?
Yeah, Kevin, great question. So, yes, so let's say I'm also interested in a TCAT. So in this case, let's say I go Tennessee again, and I want to do it this way. Let's say I'm interested in TCAT Hohenwald, for example. I search. Oh, it didn't like how I searched that. All right, so let's do this then instead. Let's go Tennessee College of Applied and hit search. And see, this is good. You see again, it gave us an error. All right, so let's try this. And this is all about data, folks, in terms of how is that data presented. So I'm going to spell out Tennessee, and now you see it works, right? So here might be the workaround, because that might be a little cumbersome for a lot of students. So let's go back to add more schools for a second to get back to the screen. And so I'm going to search Tennessee, and I know that my TCAT that I'm wanting to attend is in Hohenwald. So in this case, I'm going to utilize the city feature and just type in Hohenwald and click search. And when I do that, boom, there's TCAT Hohenwald for me to select. I check the box, and then I can move on. So that's how you would do it. And Kevin, that's a great example, because by us searching for TCAT, by then TN, that didn't work. Yeah. Notice the Tennessee is spelled out, so it might be best to search by city in that case. Yeah. I think the only reason why I would always caution, just caution one thing. You guys are professionals on this line. Y'all probably know this, but some of our schools do have satellite campuses. For example, all right, TCAT in Clarksville is actually the Dixon campus. So to actually get your financial aid, to quote TCAT Clarksville, if you search TCAT Clarksville, or specifically if you search for Tennessee College of Applied Technology located in Clarksville, you won't find anything. Why? Because TCAT Clarksville is a satellite of TCAT Dixon. Some of you may not have known that, right? But the same thing would apply to schools like Nashville State. You know, there's a Waverly campus in Humphreys County. You know, yet again, you would not select City Waverly to search Nashville State. You would need to utilize the Nashville State main campus here in Nashville. So sometimes, guys, less is more. And so notice how my other example, I just indicated Tennessee and named the school. I think the one place that you might be best looking or searching by city is for specifically maybe the TCATs, just in case you don't necessarily or don't remember that you had to spell out the word Tennessee. So we're going to click next, and now this is going to bring us to the select our housing plans. And so for this, I'm just going to say Middle Tennessee, we're going to live on campus. Nashville State, I'm going to say I'm going to live with parent, and TCAT Hohenwald, I'm going to do the same. Folks, again, some colleges across the country, they utilize the housing plans to create the budgets for the students from a financial aid perspective. I will say this, I'm unaware of the colleges in Tennessee that specifically do this. I think more than not simply will say, Jason, this housing plan question is irrelevant to us. They just need to select something in order to move on in the FAFSA. So my point is a student should not tarry too long on this page. Just select their potential housing plans and move on. Kevin, I think the only other thing that we need to address on this slide is the notion of, Jason, does order matter? I had a parent last night at a financial aid workshop ask me during my presentation, Jason, I've read some colleges indicate that they have to be the first college on the FAFSA. And I said, if that college is located in Tennessee, please send me the information because, you know, I'd like to kindly remind the financial aid office that the order is now a moot point anymore. So several years ago, folks, FAFSA, when you, in this case, I'm sending my FAFSA to Middle, Nashville State, and TCAT Hohenwald. When Middle receives my FAFSA, only Middle will see that I indicated Middle on my FAFSA. When Nashville State receives my FAFSA, only Nashville State will see that I put them on my FAFSA, and same applies to TCAT Hohenwald. There was concern that some colleges out there were using the ranking from a scholarship perspective, right? In other words, if you listed such and such number 7, that college might not award you as much as if you had listed them 1. And out of that concern that was expressed by parents and students, FAFSA said, all right, then we're going to stop this. Only the college listed will only see that the student listed their information. So let's be clear from a TSAC perspective, okay? So from a HOPE scholarship, TSAA perspective, and ... Tennessee Promise, right, if applicable, because I've listed Middle, then Nashville, and then TCAT, as a state agency, I do get to see the ranking, and our system gets to see this ranking. And the reason is so that we can get your aid to the college that you've listed first. So in other words, in this example, because I listed Middle first, that is where my HOPE scholarship and my TSAA will be, okay? Now, let's fast forward to April. At that point in time, all right, if I've now decided I'm going to Nashville State, contrary to popular belief out there, because I've listed Nashville State on my FAFSA, the only thing I need to do to get my financial aid to Nashville State is to go to the TSAC Student Portal and update my college there. Folks, the student no longer, and this has been the case for now 5 to 6 years, the student does not have to to reorder their schools on the FAFSA. And some of you are like, but Jason, but college such and such tells me that. Again, folks, what did I just say FAFSA no longer does? It no longer lets colleges know their ranking. Therefore, the order is irrelevant from a college perspective. As long as the college is indicated on the FAFSA, they will have that student's information. The only time order matters, and when I say this, let me say this. When it matters is simply when I get the student's FAFSA here, middle is where the hope scholarship will be for this student. If that student attends national state ultimately next August, the only thing the student needs to do is go to the TSAC student portal and update the college there. He or she does not have to go back to the FAFSA and move national state up to #1, because again, the ranking from a college perspective is irrelevant now. And I get off my soapbox. Kevin, I could tell I was on my soapbox a little bit for that, so I apologize. All right, so let's move on. All right, so now we're going to get into the dependency status of the FAFSA. Generally speaking, if you're a high school senior, more than likely you are going to answer all these questions no. First question, what is your marital status as of today? And this is a great time to point out, Kevin, you know, if a mom and dad's doing this right now, top left-hand corner of every screen, there's a little blue ribbon right there that indicates who, like the question that's being posed, who is this question being asked of? And so in this case, this is a student still. So what is the student's marital status? Well, I'm going to assume I am single. So we click next. Next questions asked again the student. Do you have or will you have children who will receive more than half of their support from you between July 1 of 20 and July 30th of 2021? I'm going to say no. And the next question, do you have dependents who live with you and who receive more than half their support from you now through July 30th of 21? Again, I'm going to say no, I do not, and I'm going to move on. On the next screen, the student is asked to basically check a box if any of the following questions apply to them. So first, is the student currently on active duty? Second, are you a veteran of the armed forces? Third, at any time since you turned 13 years of age, were both parents deceased? Were you in foster care, or were you a dependent or ward of the court? So again, folks, if that at 13, at 14, at 15, at 16, at 17, that's what that question is asking there. Next, as determined by a court in your state of legal residence, are you or were you an emancipated minor? And finally, does someone other than your parent or step-parent have legal guardianship of you as determined by a court in your state of legal residence? Folks, this is legal guardianship. This is not custody. This is not temporary guardianship. This is specifically legal guardianship. So if a court document, if a grandparent, an aunt, an uncle indicates to you that they have a court document that indicates that they are the student's legal guardian, then that student can check this box, okay? And again, a student would check any of these boxes apply. Again, 95%, guys, that is a Jason percentage. That's not a official, we ran the numbers percentage, but I would say about 95% of our high school seniors that we work with, they're going to select none of the above, right, to these questions. So what does that mean at this point in time? Oh, one more question. I'm sorry. One more question. On or after July 1 of 2019, were you homeless, or were you a self-supporting youth or at risk of being homeless? You know, for my high schools and school districts, you know, this is where I would ask you to apply, you know, your, I would say your decision making on certain students in certain situations where you have the authority and the autonomy to potentially deem a student homeless or an unaccompanied youth, right? So if you click, if the student has been deemed that, they can click yes and move on. And generally speaking, all they would need ultimately for their college would be a letter from the school or school district indicating that per our homeless school liaison, we have deemed that this student is homeless or an unaccompanied youth by, whatever quote unquote standards you have set as a district or a high school. Guys, I'm not the expert in terms of how a student becomes homeless or not, this, that, and the other, but from a school district perspective, you obviously have that, and I know counselors, about that as well. So again, I'm going to say no, and I'm going to move on, and this is where at this point in time, because I've answered all these questions no, FAFSA now asks, based on your answers, you now need to provide parental information, all right? And we're going to move forward where we are going to provide parental information. But this is a good time just for me to pause here and say this. If a student is in a special circumstance and unable to provide parental information, this is where they can indicate, I am unable to provide the information of the parents, and then answer a few other follow-up questions before ultimately being able to skip the parent section to at least get the FAFSA submitted so that they can then work with their financial aid office about their situation to see if they truly do qualify for what's called a dependency override. I'm going to hit on that topic more at the end of this webinar, but for now, I'm going to say I will provide information about my parents, and I'm going to move on. So on the next screen, this is where the first page, it asks, what is the parent's marital status? I've actually got a new way of presenting this when I do presentations, but essentially it's from this perspective, all right? Student, who do you live with? So if your mom and dad are married and they live together, then you are going to select married for their marital status, all right? On the other hand, if you live with a mom and only your mom and she's never been married, then you will select never married. Or on the other hand, if mom is currently divorced or separated, then you will select divorced or separated, all right? Same applies, remove mom, insert dad. If dad's never been married, then you select never married. If dad is currently divorced or separated, then you will select divorced or separated, right? And then move on, which asks the question about when did the parent become divorced or separated, all right? Then finally, if I live with my mom, but mom has now remarried and lives with my stepdad, and that's who I live with, and in this case, mom will indicate married or remarried, and FAFSA will require mom plus stepdad's information if that is who I live with. Same thing applies if dad's remarried to my stepmom, I live with my dad and stepmom. Dad in this case would select married or remarried, and FAFSA would ultimately require dad plus stepmom's information. Folks, it's pretty straightforward to me. But many of you know this, right? Kevin as well, right? We've been doing this for years, so right, we kind of know what FAFSA is asking, but that's how to determine that. So I'm going to indicate that my parents are married, and so let's say they married January of 1975. So in other words, just the month and year. We don't need the actual day. So dads, moms, you're off the hook. You don't necessarily have to remember your anniversary date. I just need you to remember the month and year you got married, not the actual day, all right? So let's say I got married 01/1975. So we click next, and now FAFSA begins asking for parent one's information. Folks, I do not care who you list as parent one. I do not care whatsoever. FAFSA does not care. Here's what parents just need to understand. Whoever they list first, they just need to remember that, because whoever has the username and password as the parent, all right, so as a reminder, right, a parent will need to create a username and password, again, an FSA ID under a parent's name, social, and date of birth, right? So, you know, if I list myself parent one, and then I list my spouse parent two, but parent two is the one that has the FSA ID, when FAFSA ever asks for the parent FSA ID and which parent are you, you always need to select that, right? It's parent 2 that has the FSA ID linked to that account, right? Again, in that example. So I'm just going to type in a random social, right? And then last name and first letter of first name, and then date of birth. We will do 1955. Email address, we'll do parent@gmail.com, parent@gmail.com. All right. And then we will scroll down. We will click next. And now we need to do the same for parent 2. In parent 2's case, I'm going to try something to give an example of if you are working with a parent who does not have a Social Security number. If a parent does not have a social, you will enter all zeros for his or her Social Security number, okay? If that parent has what's called a tax ID number, which is possible, you know, our parents, individuals that do wish to file taxes lawfully with the IRS, they can request a tax ID number, but again, a tax ID number is not the same as a Social Security number. So if they don't have a social, they will enter all zeros. So again, we'll put last name Doe, first initial first name is J, and this parent's date of birth, we're going to put the same, we'll put 56. All right, we'll click next. Have your parents lived in Tennessee for at least 5 years? Same thing, just like the student section, right? If they're lifelong Tennesseans or if they've lived here for at least 5 years, they answer yes. If they have not, again, the parent just needs to make sure that they indicate what month and what year they moved to Tennessee, right? So if I moved in August of 2018, that parent needs to indicate 08-2018 as when they moved to Tennessee. Again, I've lived here for 5 years. I'm going to click yes, and I'm going to move on. This is the next screen is where it asks about the parent's household information. So since the parent, the student indicated that mom and dad are married, that you see the number 2 filled in for parents. Because, you know, this is the student's FAFSA, they will see that 1 is already filled in as, quote unquote, yourself. So then the next line is your parents' other children. So in other words, student, if you have any brothers or sisters that your parents will provide more than half their support from July 1 through July 30th of 2021, then enter a number here, right? So let's say I have 2 other siblings, so I will indicate 2. And then finally, FAFSA asks other people if they live with your parents and that your parents provide more than half of their support. So example here is, let's say you have an elderly grandparent that lives with you. This is where you could indicate 1 if you have an elderly parent, or 2 if both elderly parents are living with you. In this case, I'm just going to leave this blank. And you see FAFSA thankfully does the math for you. So I have mom and dad plus me plus brother and sister. That means there are 5 folks in my household. Of that number 5, how many will be in college? All right. This is where I just have to say, from a student perspective, you only count the student and a brother and sister. Per FAFSA, you do not count a mom or a dad if they themselves are in college or have returned to college. You only, on the student's FAFSA, you will only indicate yourself, so at least 1. But let's say in this case I have a brother in college or who will be in college at the same time I will next fall of 2020. I'm going to indicate 2 in that example, and I'm going to move on. This now is where we get into the IRS tax information. For 2018, have your parents completed the IRS tax form? Parents have 3 options. If they filed back in the spring, they will click already completed. If they filed for extensions, and as a friendly reminder, although again I'm not a CPA, but I believe October 15th is the extension deadline, they can select will file. And that's how they can do the FAFSA now prior to having those 2018 taxes submitted or reported by the October 15th deadline. And then finally, for parents who are unemployed or were unemployed in 2018, or were/are disabled and are not required to file taxes, right? Some parents will select not going to file. So in this case, we filed our taxes. This is a change this year where there's no longer a 1040A, no longer a 1040EZ. We all filed a 1040, so you will select 1040 from those options. And then finally, in this case, I'm going to assume if I'm married, the preferred filing method would be married filing joint. So this is where you see FAFSA gives the parent the option to use the IRS Data Retrieval tool. Yes, parents, when given this option, need to use the IRS Data Retrieval tool. It will make this a whole lot simpler, period, okay? That said, this demo site does not allow us to use the data retrieval tool, but just understand, to basically activate the data retrieval tool, they will simply create link to IRS, and then yet again, this goes back to which parent that you listed, 1 or 2, which one has the FSC ID. If who I listed as parent 2 is the one with the FSC ID, you will select parent 2 and then enter his or her username and password and click next to link to the IRS data retrieval, okay? Once at that screen, the parent will simply enter the address as it appears on the 2018 tax return and then transfer their information. Again, because we're unable to do that, we're going to click next to, actually we're not, we're going to click skip to bypass this option. And this is where FAFSA will begin asking questions from our tax return. Now, Kevin's taking care of me. So I'm going to introduce everyone to the new tax documents for 2018, all right? What you see right now, hopefully on the screen, is, now, this is the new 1040. Notice, as you scroll down page 1, it looks like half of it's missing. Well, that's because this is the new redesigned 1040. The income information that you need actually appears on page 2. And in this case, that first question asking what was your parent's adjusted gross income, that will be found from line 7 that I'm circling right now, okay? So again, if a family is unable to use the data retrieval tool, they will look at their 1040, look at line 7, and indicate whatever the income is listed over here, okay? So back to here. So let's say we made combined in 2018 $50,000. So we click next. The next screen will ask how much specifically did parent 1 make in 2018 versus how much did parent 2 make in 2018. Folks, even if the data retrieval tool is utilized, these are the 2 questions that FAFSA and IRS is unable to transfer, because if you file jointly, everything's combined. Therefore, parents, yet again, have to look at tax documents. So, for example, the easiest thing, if mom and dad work and they receive a W-2 from an employer, they will simply look at their respective W-2s and look at line 1 to answer those 2 questions. How much did mom make versus how much did dad make, parent 1 versus parent 2. For some of our families, okay, perhaps one parent owns their own business, right? Or there's a farm, right, that's owned. Then in this case, some of the income earned information will come from lines 12 and or lines 18 on the IRS Schedule 1 form. Again, not all parents will have a Schedule 1, but some will, and this is where they may look for their income earned from work. The other IRS document to show everyone is the K-1 for, yet again, those that are self-employed. On this form, if one was filed, look at line item 14, box A. That would let you know what the income was earned in 2018. And you may be like, Jason, I get you know all that, but how do you know all that? Again, folks, these instructions right here underneath the question, right? How much did parent 1 earn from work in 2018? This amount is your parent 1 portion of, again, you can also look at the IRS 1040 line 1, but again, because that's a joint amount, it's best to me to look at either the Schedule 1, the W-2, or the K-1 as presented. So in this case, let's say parent 1 made $30,000 and then parent 2 made $20,000, all right? We'll enter that, we will move on. Now to ask about the, enter the amount of income tax for 2018. This comes from the 1040, line 13, minus the Schedule 2, line 46. So let's go back to that 1040, which is right here. Here is line 13. We would just simply look at this amount, and then we would look at the Schedule 2, which I believe is right here. Here's line 46. Yet again, I've already noticed not everyone I've worked with has had a Schedule 2. And so, in other words, if you don't, then just assume that 0 is the answer for box 46, okay, if that's the case. But that is how you answer the income tax question at this case. Kevin, forgive me. I tried to open your email. My bad. We're going to go back to FAFSA. I'm just going to put a random dollar amount in just to move on.
Yeah. Michaela has her hand raised there, but we'll get to her at the end.
Yeah, Michaela, I will. I'm sorry.
No, okay.
Good.
Michaela.
Oh, Michaela. I'm sorry, Michaela. We'll try to get the questions at the end. How about that? All right, next section. This is where a lot of this information more than likely will not apply to mom or dad. On the other hand, if the data retrieval tool is used, most of these boxes will indicate transfer from the IRS. So generally speaking, most of the parents that I work with, that you work with, this information will be transferred or it will be a moot point for that parent. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that screen, nor honestly this screen, other than the fact that if a parent you're working with has paid child support, it does indicate, in 2018, how much child support. But again, if you are the parent that's doing this FAFSA, right, that you are the student's parent who was on this FAFSA and you actually paid child support for other children, then this is where you would indicate that amount for 2018. And on the next screen, same thing here, not going to spend a lot of time. Most of these answers will transfer. I think the one question is that top one again, child support, in this case, received for all children in the household. So again, if you are the mom or dad on this FAFSA, and you are receiving child support or did receive child support in 2018, you will report the amount received right here in this line item for 2018 for your student and any child that is included in your household. So we will now click next. This is where we get to, as of today, does the total amount of your parent's current assets exceed? And you see this dollar amount. You may be like, Jason, what is an asset? Well, this is where I would tell a parent to click on the asset so that you can see what FAFSA considers an asset. Things like cash, checking, savings, all right? Investments such as CDs, money market accounts, stocks, bonds, etc. All right. Also, 529 college savings plans, and I think this is an important note to make, especially if my friends from the Treasury are on this call today. This is a common question I know they get, that they mentioned the Tennessee STARS program. If a student or the parent own a 529, the parent should consider it an asset of the parent. It should not be considered an asset of the student, okay? So again, if a student or parent owns a 529, it is an asset of the parent, period, okay? If a grandparent, on the other hand, own the 529, then it will be excluded totally on the FAFSA. It will not be reported either as a parent asset or a student asset in that case if a grandparent, an aunt, an uncle owns that 529. So just FYI about assets. I'll say this, because, right, I'm looking, Kevin, we're 54 minutes in. We are going to have a follow-up FAFSA webinar in 2 weeks where basically you can bring all your questions, and you may have more questions about assets at that time. You know, if your assets do exceed $9,000 in this case, then this is where you will basically ballpark what those actual value of your assets are for these 3 questions. If your assets do not exceed that, then you will click no, and then you will move on. I think, Kevin, the only other thing I need to add here is understand your home, your 401k, and any IRA that you have, they are not considered assets on the FAFSA. So again, your home, a 401k, and IRA are not assets per FAFSA. So again, that may be something we talk more about in 2 weeks when we do a FAFSA FAQ. All right. So on the next screen, it actually goes to student information. If I may for a second, Kevin, I'm going to go back to parent demographics because I want to show everyone something else. I want to go back in parent one's case, I want to change his or her social to all zeros, just like parent two, because this is one of the 2 most common questions I get every day. Is about, Jason, for our parents who do not have socials, FAFSA errors, and I want to show you what this error looks like. All right. So, assuming the parent that does not have a social, assuming that they did file taxes and they entered that information, when they get past the asset screen that we were just at, and we're getting there, folks. One more screen. So here's the asset screen. Here's what's going to happen. It's going to still, I think, take me to the student screen, and it's going to error after the student screen. So for the student, did he or she file taxes in 2018? Since a lot of the students I encounter do not, or maybe didn't even work, we're going to say not going to file, but same thing that we just went through for the parent. If the student did file taxes, they will indicate already completed for 2018 and move on. Now, since we indicate not going to file, let's assume here they didn't work. We will enter 0 and we'll move on. If they did work, and let's say they received a W-2 saying that they earned $900, well, this is where they would input $900, right? But again, if they didn't work, we're going to assume that. We're going to hit 0 and move on. We get these same questions that we just saw in the parent section, which generally speaking will not apply to any student that you're working with as a high school. Then we get to the student's asset information. You know, assuming like a typical high school student, even if they have a checking account, if there's not a ton of money in it, meaning if today, you know, there's $50, but there's a great chance by the end of tonight there's going to be 0 in it, I would just, in this example, I'm just going to enter all zeros, assuming the typical high school student, and move on. And this is where I hope that we encounter an error. Let's see. We do. So guys, when you're working with a parent who does not have socials and that we've entered all zeros for, but you reported that they filed taxes, you get this error from FAFSA basically saying, Jason, are you sure, or parent, are you sure that you filed taxes and didn't have a social? Again, to get past this error, since we have 2 parents that we reported all zeros for, we click that check for errors box once, and then FAFSA then has the same error message for parent 2. We click it again, and magic, we get past the errors. And now we get to the are you a preparer? Guys, a preparer is someone that charges you money to do the FAFSA. None of us are preparers, so the answer is no. We click next. This is where the student can review all the information that they entered on the FAFSA. They will click next. Once it's reviewed, everything looks right. Now we're at the signature page. This is where the parent, the student will sign, ideally electronically. As we know in this example, the student has an electronic a username and password, So the student will click that blue button to sign. They will agree to the statement. They will click next, and then they will click sign this FAFSA to submit, or excuse me, to sign as a student. And then we're going to do the same thing for parent. Click to sign the FAFSA, agree to the statement. This is where, generally speaking, there will be a blue button if the parent did have a username and password where the parent could sign the FAFSA. But in this instance, again, I purposely have done this. If the parent doesn't have a social, we need them to print a signature page. So we'll click that print signature page option. We will click next. FAFSA will now go back to the screen. We will need to print this signature page, which we will click print, and we'll click print one more time. This page comes up. You will print this signature page. That must be signed and dated by a parent, and then the page will indicate where that needs to be mailed to, all right? Once that's been printed out, you can close that screen, and now we are finally ready, or you will close the screen here, and now we are finally ready to submit the FAFSA, boom, which we did. And this is why I love the demo site, because this actually took us through how to submit a FAFSA. This now says, congratulations, student's name was John. This shows the student what the student's expected family contribution is. If you click the arrow here, this will indicate if they are Pell Grant eligible. Now, guys, understand this is a dental site. A student with a 999 ESC will not be Pell Grant eligible, right? But in this case, it's a dental site. But this is how a student can learn if he or she is Pell Grant eligible. And that, and guys, we have successfully submitted a FAFSA, and it's 11:01. Kevin, are we okay? Because we're recording, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So some of you had some questions.
Yeah.
And then I also wanted to quickly go through a couple slides. Carolyn, counselors absolutely do have access to the demo site. Email me for the demo site, and that's something too we can send out once this is recorded. You absolutely have access to the demo site, and the demo site will give you instructions on like fake username and passwords that you can use. So yes, you absolutely have access to the demo site. Yeah, and so Nicolaya, so good. I answered your question, so that's awesome. I asked her, she had a question about the homeless school letter. That is what the financial aid office would need in order to.
Click on her hand. It should let her talk. I don't know.
Okay, gotcha. But she said we're good to go,
Okay.
so I think we're good to go. Guys, you spent an hour and 2 minutes with me. I appreciate that. Let's quickly go through this. Just a reminder, upcoming webinars. In 2 weeks, we're going to have a Q&A. So I think at that point in time, after 2 weeks of doing the FAFSA, or 3 weeks maybe, fully with your students, maybe bring those questions that you have on Friday, October the 18th. Again, same 10 a.m. Central Time. That'll be our FAFSA Q&A. And then November 1st at 10 a.m., we will have an eGrants webinar where we'll go through about pulling FAFSA reports at that point in time. This is the tsacfrenzy.gov site. This is where all of our FAFSA resources are. Those tutorial videos that Mary Nell, Kevin, Suzette, myself have produced back in early August that walks you through paying for college at the different types of colleges. All that's on this site. Some of you attended the webinar on the 1st that Kevin, Suzette, and I did. We kind of went through the site, but again, tnsacfrenzy.gov. This is where we're going to put all these FAFSA resources, including this webinar. Here's a reminder for everyone. You know, hopefully you're going to enjoy your weekend, but just in case, if any of you were planning to do a FAFSA workshop this Sunday, the IRS Data Retrieval tool will be down for some quote-unquote critical system upgrades. It will be down apparently from 7 a.m. to, I believe it's 5 p.m. Eastern Time this Sunday. So FAFSA's guidance here is to let your parents know, wait and do the FAFSA until after 5 p.m. Eastern Time on Sunday, or better yet, why don't you just wait till Monday and do the FAFSA? How about that? Quickly, some maybe nerdy FAFSA stuff if you're wondering what the auto zero EFC calculation is this year. So if the parent's income is $26,000 or less as reported on the FAFSA, and if anyone in the parent's household receives one of the federal benefit programs you see listed, or the student's parents satisfy one of the things in 2B. So again, if A, meaning $26,000 or less income, if the parent has that, or parents combined is that, and if they satisfy one thing in 2A or 2B, that student's EFC will automatically be 0, which means the student will qualify for a full Pell Grant. And also from a FAFSA perspective, what you would auto zero FAFSA is that a lot of the questions related to assets and also the student's income, all that would be asked, do you want to skip? Yes, you do. That's why, ladies and gentlemen, some students are able to skip, a bunch of screens is if they qualify for either the auto zero calculation or the simplified formula, which again, basically it's the same requirements with this caveat. Instead of being a $26,000 or less income, in this case it's a $49,999 or less income, and a parent simply has to satisfy something from 2A or 2B. This, when you qualify for a simplified formula, what this does, folks, is it skips your asset questions. You are asked the question, do you want to skip the parent's assets? Student, do you want to skip the student's assets? That's basically what this means, and that's why I did that. Or this is why I'm showing you this. Last slide. Scenario right quick. That I mentioned the first most common question I'm getting as of this week about parents without socials. The other one is, Jason, here's my scenario. Student lives with someone other than mom and dad. Folks, here is what in your head, this should be your flow chart. All right, thinking about dependency questions. 1, does that someone have legal guardianship per state court? If that person does, the student is independent on the FAFSA. All right, if not, or if that's only a custody agreement or a temporary guardianship agreement, then 2, does the school district deem the student unaccompanied, or is the student homeless? If the school does, or school district does, as Nicolea, as you asked earlier, all that student eventually needs is a letter from the school district indicating that per our standards, you qualify, or this student is deemed homeless or unaccompanied. Again, however, the student does not meet whatever requirements you have for unaccompanied youth or homeless, then 3, student may submit the FAFSA as a special circumstance. This option is given after answering no to all the dependency questions. What is a special circumstance, or what do they have to do thereafter? Well, once you submit the FAFSA, at some point you need to contact your prospective college's financial aid office regarding your situation. If that situation is approved by that college, yet again, you will be deemed independent on the FAFSA. However, if the college denies the special circumstance, the student then must provide biological parents' information on the FAFSA. If a parent refuses to give such information, the student will only qualify for student loans. That means no Hope Scholarship eligibility, no Tennessee Promise eligibility, no Pell Grant eligibility. The student will only qualify for loans because as a dependent student without the necessary parent information, your EFC does not get calculated, and therefore your FAFSA is deemed incomplete. And a financial aid office cannot administer financial aid to that student until it is completed. In that last bullet, you see it's in bold. It's in bold for a reason. Parents' refusal to provide information for FAFSA is not a special circumstance, okay? So just remember that. My promise, you're working with undocumented or DACA students, please give a shout out to my folks, or here's my shout out to our friends over at Conexion. Have these students visit their tnedequity.org site so that they can see their resources as an undocumented or a DACA student, see what scholarships might be out there for them, and also learn more information about colleges that may actually award them scholarships based on their status. And then finally, guys, you know my outreach staff. This is our team across the state. This is my contact information as always. Y'all know this. That's my cell phone. You can text me, you can call me, you can email me. Hopefully, right, guys, y'all know this. I feel like I do a decent job getting back with you. There's times, you know, Miss Carolyn emailed me something late last week, and I think I just got to her on Tuesday or Wednesday. But thankfully, most of you do have grace and show grace to me when I'm a little bit busy, and I appreciate that. That said, we have gone over. Kevin, I apologize. I hope that was good for everybody. I'm going to stop here, and if you have questions, email, text them to me, or better yet, come back and visit us on 2 weeks on October 15th. We will send that registration site out, and we will go from there. Guys, take care. Have a great weekend. God bless you.